At the sight of this, the female demon who remained fell to the ground and wailed with anguish, lamenting over how close Muzan was to destruction as she tore out her own hair with frustration. I mean, she wished that the monster had died so much in that moment that she cared not for the repercussions of his curse and screamed his name in anguish. Yet, she lived. She was free from Muzan's control due to his now severely weakened state. From here, Yoriichi asked her for her help in defeating him, to which she agreed. And this is a battle that she fights even to this day, as this demon girl was none other than Tamayo. Later that same day, Yoriichi would be informed by his fellow demon slayers that his beloved brother Michikatsu had become a demon. Now at this point, Yoriichi's brother, a fellow demon slayer recruited by his recommendation, was a demon. He had failed to defeat Muzan and had allowed Tamayo to escape, and so he was banished from the demon slayer corps. His former comrades were so enraged, in fact, that they even suggested that he kill himself, which is something we know that other demon slayers would certainly do if a disciple or relative of theirs became a demon by choice. However, the leader of the Demon Slayer Corps, who was at this time a newly appointed 6-year-old, would not allow such a thing to happen, and so Yoriichi simply left. For the rest of his life, Kibutsuji Muzan would actively avoid him out of fear, leaving Yoriichi with no pursuit, and so he decided to visit a friend he hadn't seen in nearly 2 years. This friend being Sumiyoshi, the ancestor of Tanjiro and Nezuko. Yoriichi was quite happy to see Sumiyoshi's family was doing well, as seeing the happiness of others made him happy. After telling Sumiyoshi pretty much his life story, Yoriichi expressed his belief that his strength was a blessing bestowed to him for the purpose of ending Muzan's reign of terror. But he was lacking, and he failed. And because of his failure, countless people would suffer from then on, and that pained him more than anything. Seeing Yoriichi in such pain was difficult for Sumiyoshi, as he had no idea what to say. But before he could think about it any longer, his 2-year-old daughter Sumire clung to the garb of Yoriichi and offered a hug. Yoriichi would then lift the small child up per Sumiyoshi's suggestion, and at the sight of the child's pure smile and laughter, tears began to stream from Yoriichi's face. As the sun shone and Sumiyoshi's wife Suyako returned home, Yoriichi clutched Sumire ever so gently as he continued to cry, quite possibly with thoughts of the dream he once had for his own family. Seeing this, Suyako too would console Yoriichi and offer him a meal. Later that day, upon Suyako's request, Yoriichi would demonstrate his 13 sword forms for the family, all of which Sumiyoshi would carefully watch and burn into his memory. Yoriichi's sun-breathing forms were of such grace and beauty that Sumiyoshi completely forgot to breathe. With a blade, Yoriichi favored spirit more than man. After this, Sumiyoshi urged Yoriichi to return someday, but before he left, Yoriichi gave his ear ornaments to Sumiyoshi, making it clear that he would never return. As he left, Yoriichi looked very sad, causing Sumiyoshi to cry. But he also yelled out to Yoriichi that because he had saved their lives in the past, that they would carry on his legacy. That despite what he may consider to be his failures, they weren't for naught, as he would pass on both the ear ornaments and sun breathing to their descendants. This notion bringing a smile from Yoriichi that resembled the rising of the sun across what was once the desolate night, as he said, "Thank you." Now, despite his mark and age, Yoriichi's final moments wouldn't come until far later, because at more than 80 years old, on the night of a red moon, a marked Yoriichi stood before his demonic brother Michikatsu, who is now known as Kokushibo, the strongest demon in existence besides Muzan himself. Upper Moon 1. Kokushibo stood there baffled and questioned how exactly Yoriichi, and Yoriichi alone, surmounted the price of the mark. But Yoriichi wouldn't answer. He instead began to cry and in a hoarse voice expressed his sympathies to his beloved brother. And because he had never seen such a display of emotions from his brother, Kokushibo stood there restless. But in the next moment, Yoriichi's sentimentality disappeared as he assumed an attacking stance. The air became heavy from Yoriichi's aura alone. There were absolutely no flaws in his stance despite his age. And just before moving, he warned his brother of his approach. And before Kokushibo could reach for his sword, Yoriichi had already cut his neck with power and speed no different from that of his prime. And with that, Kokushibo was certain that with the following strike, Yoriichi would cleave his head off. But that second strike would never come, as Yoriichi's life had come to an end as he remained standing. A flurry of emotions overwhelmed Kokushibo at the sight of this, because if Yoriichi's life was even a single breath longer, he too would have died. And so, in a totally blind rage, Kokushibo cut Yoriichi's already dead body in two, and in doing so, also cut in half the wooden flute only able to play a single note that he had once made for his younger brother Yoriichi. This flute having remained on Yoriichi's person for decades, even despite his brother having denounced his own humanity, a realization that left the demon in tears. He had been utterly defeated. Yoriichi was a man of peerless strength and grace that mirrored divinity, but in the end had lost those he cherished most of all, one way or another. But just as Tsumiyoshi once said, his efforts weren't for naught, as even today, his acts still stand to support the demon slayers in their fight against the creatures of the night. And with that, this has been the story of Yoriichi Tsujikuni.